How many have ever just needed some encouragement in their life? Raise your hand. You ever feel discouraged? Last week I was feeling a little bit discouraged. And so I was looking to get some encouragement from my wife. And so I was kind of fishing around for some compliments, you know. Have you ever done that? No? I'm the only one? Okay, cool. I was kind of fishing around. Hopefully she'd give me some compliments or make me, you know. So I didn't really know how to do this. So I started to give her some compliments. You know, I thought maybe if I give her enough compliments, maybe she'll say something nice about me. So that was my plan. So I was like, you know, Penny, you're so beautiful. Nothing. I said, you know, you're the best wife a guy could ever ask for. Nothing. So this went on for a little bit, and I don't know if I don't know if, then she just looked at me and I thought, here it comes. Here comes my compliment. And she looked at me and I wrote it down so I don't get the wording wrong. She said, Troy? I said, what? She said, I really like you as a person. What does that even mean? I really like you as a... We've been married for 18 years. Troy, I really like you as a person. She seems to think that's a great compliment because she said, you know what, not everybody likes everybody, but I really like you as a person. Well, so anyways, I'm feeling a little discouraged today. No, I'm just kidding. Why don't you turn with me in your Bibles to Psalm 23. We've been working our way through this psalm in a series called 23. And this is probably one of the most beautiful pictures in all of Scripture. And like I said last week, it's like trying to stand in front of a $5 million painting and try to describe it so that you can understand it. Or standing in front of a beautiful car. It's hard to really understand it in its fullness. But Psalm 23 verse 1 says this. This is what we talked about last week. The Lord is my shepherd. I lack nothing. Or some versions say, I shall not want. And then it says, He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right path for His name's sake. So I just want you to know that, just a quick review of last week, just to remember that this passage is, we read it a lot at funerals and we read it a lot, but it's really applicable to our lives every single day. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures and restores my soul. He leads me beside quiet waters. This passage, this first part, is basically telling us that He provides for us. That God, the good shepherd, that He provides for us. And He protects us. And He restores us. And we need to make time in our life, as it says in this passage, He makes me lie down beside quiet waters. He makes me lie down in green pastures. It's really important in our life to understand that He provides for us. He doesn't provide what we think that we need. We think that we want. He supplies what we need. We can say, I want this and I want that and I want this, but He supplies what we need. How many have ever prayed for something and got something totally different and then ended up looking back at it later on in life and thought, you know what, that's what I really needed all along? Because He supplies what we need, not what we want. And it says that He protects us. He doesn't lead us beside rushing rivers. He leads us by still waters. And that's protection. And it says He refreshes my soul. I want you to know that Him providing, Him protecting, and Him restoring is the pattern that we need to use in our lives every day. Because that protecting, restoring, all of that leads to us resting. And if we don't rest, we won't be ready for what is next. Rest is very, very important. I'm going to give you a hint. Pastors, and lots of people, but in my world, pastors are the worst resters. I go to a conference, I walk in, hey, how are you, Bob? Tired. So tired. Why? Oh, so busy. You know, and every one of you will go to your workplace and you'll ask someone, how are you? Oh, busy. Because life is busy. But the pattern that he's laid out for us is you need to understand that I will provide for you, I will protect you, and I want to give you rest. But I want you to know that you need to rest. Because you need to rest for what is next. You need to be ready for what is next. We were not designed to go from battle to battle to battle to battle to battle. We were designed to go, to be rest, restored, rest, battle, rest, battle. Rest. Because we need him to restore us so that we can fight the battle. And then the next part of this scripture, it tells us more about this pattern. It says, I want to restore you, I want to take care of you, I want to provide for you, I want you to rest. Because, it says this in verse 4. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, or through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. So we have the first part of this passage talking about him restoring us and causing us to rest. And we need to understand that it's preparing us for in life for what's next. But in this passage, right after we've been rested and restored, the right next thing is the valley of the shadow of death. I can remember as a kid, I can remember going out and being in the sun. And if you could remember, and your shadow would, depending where the sun was, your shadow would be really short or really long. And I remember trying to manipulate and move my shadow around as a kid. But this is basically telling us that you can walk through the valley of the shadow of death, meaning that you can be so close to death that its shadow is cast upon you. I remember one time when I was a kid, I was probably about 10 or 12 years old, and I was playing baseball behind the church where we were living at the time. And I remember that we were playing, it was hot outside, and I remember that I started to get heat stroke, and I started to make my way to the house, and I got about halfway to the house, and I couldn't make it the rest of the way. I was just about 11 years old, and I remember collapsing on the ground. And I remember thinking, I have to get to the house. And I really felt like, ever had a heat stroke before? I felt like I was going to die. And I remember crawling over to this little tree. And it was just probably a few years old, this little tree. And I remember thinking, I need to get in the shade. And I remember that I got over there wasn't very much shade because the tree was so small. And so I had to get really up underneath the tree to try to get into the shade. And it's telling us in this passage that though you walk through the valley of the shadow of death, that you can walk so close to death and to harm and to sickness that I want you to know that I will be with you. That once you've rested, once you've been restored, when you start to walk through the path that I've led for you, and if the enemy comes into that path, I want you to know that even though it's dark and even though it's difficult, I want you to know that I will be there for you. And then it says this, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. It takes place right after this providing, provision, and restoring. That we can find ourselves in the shadow of death. This seems like a really small detail, but I want you to make note of it today. That in the first part of this psalm, he writes using the word he. He. And then all of a sudden, when he gets through the restoring, the refreshing, and he gets into the darkness, the language from he switches to this other language of you. And it might seem like a small change, but there's this closing of distance that's happening. He says, He provides for me. He restores me. He. And then all of a sudden, when things get rough, He says, you. It switches from He to you. It goes from being farther to closer. He prepares, He provides, He restores. And when times get tough, He says, you. It's really subtle, but I think it needs to be pointed out. I need you to understand. I need me to understand today. When things are good, He goes before us to make a way. When darkness comes, He walks beside us. There's a big difference. When things are good, He's paving the way. He's like, you know what? Come this way. I've prepared you. I've restored you. I've refreshed you. This is what's next. Come on. But then when things get tough, He's no longer ahead. He's beside. He says, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. You say, well, how do I know that He's with me? Just a couple of things that you can write down. You need to go on the reputation of the shepherd.
Amen.
You need to go on the reputation of the shepherd. Has He ever left you before? I'm not asking you if you've ever gone through hard times before, because when sin came into the world, we all go through hard times.
Amen. That's right.
But did He ever leave you? See, for me, in the moment, I might think that He's left me. And I might be discouraged and think that things are broken. But when I get through the dark valley, the hundreds and thousands of dark valleys that I've gone through, every single time I look back, I know He was with me. Because this reputation of the shepherd is very, very important. I would encourage you that when you go through tough times, I was talking to Christian this morning. Christian was just talking about his journey, about being a fireman and becoming a fireman. And he said to me this morning, he said, you know, even now that I look back at it, even the things that now that I know are miracles that have happened, even things that I had no idea, as I look back at them now, I can see He was with me every step of the way. Then it says this, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. The shepherd always carried a rod and a staff, and he used it for many things. He would use it to protect the sheep against the enemy. So if a wolf or a bear was to jump out, that he would have something to protect the sheep. He would use it for protection. He would also use it to guide and to move the sheep. So he would take the rod, and if the sheep was going the wrong way, he would use it to block the path and to push the sheep over with everybody else. But sheep aren't that smart, as we've already discussed. And sheep would often try to wander away. And the Bible says we're like sheep. How many know we wander away? And He, the good shepherd, still corrects us and still guides us. It's not with a big stick in heaven. But have you ever gone to do something that you knew you shouldn't do? And you're part way to doing it? And in your mind it comes? That's the correction of a shepherd. For me, it usually takes form in something, a thought that I want to say. As you all know with me, I have a really big mouth. and it's gotten me into more trouble than anything else has ever got me into in my life. But for me, it comes with that. There's this thought that comes either from my heart or from my mind, and I want to say it. And before I would say, well, you know what, just slipped out. Just had no control over it. But the truth is, I ignored his correction. And I said it anyways. He used it to guide, and he uses it to correct and to discipline. Now, nobody loves to be disciplined. I can remember one time when I had a child, and I won't tell you her name, but she was much younger. And she was about 3 years old. And I was painting her bedroom. And I remember her mother had painted this beautiful mural on the wall, and I was just painting blue, because I have no skills to paint murals, so I was just painting blue like this guy. And I was up on the ladder, and I was cutting in, and I was painting, and she walked into the room. She's 3. And she could talk like she was 32 when she was 3 years old. She walks in, "Can I help paint?" I said, "No. It's too messy. I'm painting." So I just went back to a few seconds later. "Can I help paint?" "No." "Can I help paint?" "No." "Dad, can I help paint?" "No." On and on and on. Finally, I said, "Alexandria, leave me alone. I'm busy." She was 3. She turns, half turned to leave the room. I said, "Alex, don't come back until I'm done painting." She goes, "Okay, idiot." She was 3. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. I remember just crawling down off the ladder. And I remember in that moment, I'm thinking, she's 3, she doesn't really this, so she's not going to remember. But at that moment, nobody likes discipline. So I remember going down into her room, into my room, sitting with her and talking to her. "You can't talk, you can't do this," and we talked. But we've all had those times in our life when we're corrected. And nobody likes that. No. But I want you to know that when the shepherd corrects, that it might be painful in the moment. But once you get through, it's always for your good. It doesn't say this in this passage, but in the times of being a shepherd, that often when a sheep would continue to wander away, after the sheep had done this 3 or 4 times, the shepherd would go again, and they would find them. And they would take the sheep, and they would break the sheep's leg. Then they would take the sheep, they would bandage its leg, they would put it around the shepherd's neck. And the shepherd would carry that sheep for days and weeks and months until it healed. And then it would unwrap it. I want you to know that when the Holy Spirit corrects us, that he does not just leave you. He wants to walk with you and to carry us. We go to do something and there's this check that we shouldn't do this. We shouldn't say it. That's the shepherd correcting us. And if we ignore that, we need to understand that there's going to be consequences for our actions. He's not going to break our leg and carry us around. But in life, there's consequences to our actions. During times of struggle and danger, I want you to know that when we walk through the dark valley, Jesus is there to comfort us with his rod and his staff. In Hebrew, the word for rod is shebet, S-E-B-E-T. And staff is mishena, M-I-S-H-E-N-A. And these were two very, very special words. Shebet was the idea of a stick, and they would take this stick directly from a tree. And they talk about that in the Old Testament in Leviticus 27:32. And it was used to protect the sheep from other animals. And in Proverbs 13:24, Shebet was referred to as this idea of him having authority. Authority in our lives. The Hebrew word mishena has the idea of something to lean on or to support or to rest. Together, these two words, the rod and the staff, when we put them together, these two words create this picture of this strong, protective shepherd that we can trust. The Lord is my shepherd. One that not only cares for us, who protects us. No one likes to be disciplined. No one likes it in the moment. But in the long run, discipline brings comfort. In closing today, Scott's in Halifax. You say, but what's my purpose in all of this? Like, what's my role in all this? I know that he is there to protect me, that he's created this pattern for me of rest and shadow of death and rest, and he wants to prepare me and protect me. This is awesome, but what's my role? As I studied sheep in biblical times, sheep had three purposes. The first purpose was the sheep would grow wool. And then the shepherd would take that wool off of the sheep. And then that wool would be used to keep others warm. That was the number one thing. They would grow, and a couple times a year they would take all of it off. Then they would use this wool to help and to make other people warm. And then the sheep had another responsibility. And that other responsibility was reproduction. I don't have to explain that farther than that, do I? You know, two sheep would get together, they would make another sheep. But that was another one of their responsibilities. Because the future depended on that. Because if sheep didn't make other sheep, then it would just, eventually the herd would just die off. And then the sheep would grow to be big and strong. And the third thing would be that they would be used for meat. Those are the three purposes of a sheep. I want you to know today that the Lord is my shepherd. It's personal. That he walks, provides. And when it gets tough, he walks with me. But I want you to know if there's an application here. How do we apply this for us? As sheep to the Good Shepherd. I want you to know that our purposes are much the same as the other sheep. That no, they don't pull wool off of us 3 times a year. But I want you to know that He's put a purpose in your life to help others. It may not be with warm wool, but everybody in this room has a purpose. And you've been called as a sheep to the Good Shepherd to find out what that purpose is and to help others. And then we have been called to be people who reproduce. I don't mean have children. I mean to make disciples. That our job as a sheep is not just to live our lives, grow old, be fat spiritually, and then just die. Our goal, our calling, and our purpose is to help others and to make disciples. To reproduce. Third thing. And eventually in all of our lives, there will come a time that we all die. We don't know when that will be. Some will be sooner than others. Some will be before, when they're young or old. But I want you to know that someday, all of us will stand before the Good Shepherd. And He will look at us. And what we want to hear is that you have given your life for me. Well done, my good and faithful servant. He doesn't mean, well, good job because you went to church. No. You found your gift and you produced wool that will help people. That you reproduced disciples. Not churchgoers, but that you reproduce disciples that love and follow the Good Shepherd. Well done. Well done. The Lord is my shepherd. He protects. He provides. He causes me to rest so that I can prepare for what's next. And then that pattern will be repeated in my life. Restore, fight. Restore, fight. And all along my journey, the goal is to help others, to reproduce disciples, and to give my life for Him. Maybe you're here this morning, you say, Troy, you know what? I haven't heard about this Good Shepherd. But I want to walk with Him. I want to talk with Him. I want Him to protect me. But even more than that, because it's not all about safety, what I really want is for Him to prepare me. Because I understand that I will be prepared in the dark, in the tough times. That's when our heart prepares. Perseverance produces character. And maybe you're here and say, Troy, maybe there's two groups of people here. One, you have never asked the Good Shepherd to come into your life. You've never said, I want to serve the Good Shepherd. I don't just want to go to church. I want to serve Him. If everyone will close your eyes. If you have never invited God into your life and said, God, I am a sinner and I need saving and I need you. If you have never done this, this is the first group of people. If you have never done this, I'd ask you to raise your hand really high. I promise you I won't point you out. I won't embarrass you. You say, Troy, I just want to follow the Good Shepherd. Second group of people. Maybe you're here and you say, you know what, Troy, for a lot of years I followed the shepherd. I went to church. I did what I knew I should do. But I haven't given my life to Him in a long time. And maybe you're like, Troy, I just want to rededicate my life and say, you know what? Even though I know the shepherd, I want to know Him in a deeper way. I want to recommit my life to helping, discipling, and to giving my life for Him. If that's you, say, you know what? I just want to rededicate my life to Him. Why don't you raise your hand? Don't be shy. Lots of people. Why don't we stand together in closing? And why don't you just take this next moment as Julian leads us in this song, Oh, How He Loves Us. Why don't you just think about how much He loves you, how much the shepherd loves you, and think about how much we need to give our lives to Him in these three ways today. Why don't we worship together?